Hi everyone, my name is Keela Villa and I'm the librarian at Sagu American Indian College. This interview is part of a library history project entitled Share Your Story. The purpose of Share Your Story is to capture and preserve the unique stories of AIC alumni and employees. Today is January 29th, 2024, and I am interviewing Nadine Waldrop. Nadine, thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Wonderful. So Nadine, you had about 20 years of Native ministry experience before you started working at American Indian College. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how it ultimately brought you to AIC?
Yes. It began with a call that God had on my life and let me know that I was to work with the White Mountain Apache people. And so we went, I moved up there. Well, at first I just was going on my vacations from work and helping with their camp meeting, teaching Sunday school classes there, running the hamburger stand, and just various things there. And then the end of 1967, I moved up there, and I planned to spend the rest of my ministry years there. But the next year, I was witnessing two murder cases, one that happened inside the church during a church service, and the other was a couple of months later that the young man shot and killed his uncle and then came and gave up the gun and gave himself up to us. I was with another lady missionary at the time. But so anyhow, the doctor wouldn't let me go back up. And so I started searching for ministries here in the valley, and I was able to help some at all tribes, and mostly at the Assembly of God Church in Guadalupe.
Okay.
And I remember one funny thing that happened there. We had a 12-year-old girl who's now married, and she and her husband pastor a church here in the valley. But she was like 12 years old, and she was my interpreter into Spanish. And so one night before church, she said, "I'm not going to interpret for you tonight." And I said, "Oh, why not?" And she says, "Well, the only one that doesn't speak English is my grandmother, and she sleeps anyway, so I'm not." So I thought that was cute. But anyhow, I helped there for a while. And I don't know if you know David Coda and his family.
Yeah.
Well, they attended that church, and I picked them up for Sunday school, and then brought them back, and then like almost all of, I think there were like 6 kids, and almost all of them are in ministry.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really great. So anyhow, but then I eventually ended up with the congregation that ended up being Co-op Assembly of God. It was in a different community at that time at Santa Cruz on the Gila River Reservation, and so we met in a family's home on Sunday morning, and then eventually, like in 1973, we moved to Co-op, and we ended up building a new church there, church building. It was later destroyed by an explosion. But anyhow, I pastored there, and we had a good thing going.
Yeah.
But then in 1979, the district officials decided that I should not live on the reservation alone any longer. And so that's actually, and I'll explain a little more about that later, about how I came here.
Yeah.
But that's kind of leading up to when I came here to the college.
Okay, and you mentioned 1979. I assume that was the year that you started. So can you tell me about what years you were here working at AIC and then what years you volunteered?
Well, I was employed here as a U.S. missionary from 1979. I think it was June of 79. And I was here until May of 2015.
Wow.
So I was here for 36 years.
That's an amazing
Yeah,
legacy,
yeah.
I feel like.
Yeah. So after that, I just I did volunteer some, and of course, as you know, up until maybe 6 months or a year ago,
Yes.
I still came once a week. But after that, when I lost my vision, I didn't. My eyesight vision, not my heart vision. But anyhow, I wasn't able to come any longer. So.
All right. So almost 40 years of being at AIC, working, volunteering. I love it. Well, tell me, you kind of broke it down a little bit, talking about your previous experience, but what ultimately brought you to AIC? What was kind of like, did the job come to you, or did you go searching for it? How did that all happen?
It was kind of an interesting thing, and I'll keep it short. But I think it was like in March of that year that I was still at co-op, but it was the same year that I came here. But I was at a missionaries meeting here, and Brother Hurd, who was the business manager at the time, was saying that they needed a bookkeeper.
Okay.
And so I thought, well, yeah, that's what I did. That's what I majored in school, in high school, and then that's what I did on the job I had after high school. So, but I was pastoring, so I just dropped it.
Yeah.
But a couple of months later, in the middle of the night, I woke up, and I think it was a dream. I don't know, but it was on my mind that I was going to come to AIC as the bookkeeper. And I thought, I can't do that. It's 25 miles. I can't drive 25 miles each way,
Yeah.
and still pastor.
Yeah.
So I went back to sleep. Well, the next night or two, same thing happened. And I reacted the same way.
Yeah.
And I just dismissed it, and I didn't really think about it anymore. But after I left there, I was staying with a couple that had been helping me in the church at co-op, and the lady and I were just sitting there talking one day, and we started talking about the college, and I said, I wonder if they found a bookkeeper yet, because I had no idea what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And she says, well, why don't you call Brother Hurd and find out? So I called Brother Hurd, and he says, well, my wife and Jeannie, who is one of our graduates, are working on the books now. If you want to come over and see what they're doing, you're welcome to, because they were still looking for a full-time bookkeeper. So I said, okay. So I came over, and that was on Thursday. Monday I started full-time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was very quick.
Yeah.
Then.
Yeah.
So you started as bookkeeper. How long were you bookkeeper, and then what were some of the other jobs that you did while you were here?
Okay, well, I was officially bookkeeper from like June until probably the end of October. Because Brother Hurd told me when I first came, he says, now I want you to pick my brain. He says, I want you to ask me all kinds of questions. Find out all you can from me, because in October at the board meeting I'm going to resign.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm going to suggest that they put you as business manager.
Wow.
And that's what happened.
Okay.
And so that's when I became business manager. Well, I was still bookkeeper too, until we hired someone else for bookkeeping. But it was the books were not in very good order, I must say, at that time. But they had done what they could.
Yeah.
So I was, I'm not complaining about it, just stating facts. But anyhow, yeah. So I became business manager.
Okay.
At that time, yeah. So it wasn't very long.
And did you stay business manager up until you left in 2015, or did you have other jobs as well? What were those?
Yeah. After that, I became admissions / financial aid
Okay.
person. We were not accredited yet, so we couldn't get the students couldn't get federal funding. But in addition, I helped with the admissions, and then for financial aid, I talked with people at the Bureau of Indian Affairs offices to request financial aid for students. We did get some there. I communicated with the different tribes that had students represented here, and so some of our students were able to get money from their tribes, even though we were not accredited yet, which was not the usual.
Yeah.
So, but then once we were accredited, then students were able to receive federal funds. And then I began communicating with the federal student aid people and assisting students in completing their federal forms. And I did this until the fall of 2014.
Wow. All right. So
Yeah.
many years
Yes.
of doing that.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and during that time I did spend some time, because I was feeling like I was getting burned out, a few years before I left. And so we were trying to train someone else for the business, for the financial aid office. We tried twice, 2 different people, and they didn't work out. So I went back into that office, So, and but that went on until this 2014.
Okay.
Probably the fall of 2014, fall winter, that we did, and so then at that time I transferred down to the president's office.
Okay.
Became his what do you call it? Assistant to the president.
Okay.
And Dave Moore was president at that time.
Yes. All right. So a wide variety of things that you did while you were here. What would you say was your favorite part of working here?
Working with students.
Yeah.
But I was glad to help them get funding. And it not only involved the students many times, but they had to get information from their parents for their financial aid forms if they were underage, or the age for that. And so many times I was privileged to speak to parents, and help them with their part of the forms too. And just one story, not about a parent, but a student. The students, some of the students that we had did not have regular jobs, and like on payroll and stuff. And I had this one young man, and I was trying to figure out, because he put 0 income, because he didn't think he had an income, because he didn't have an official job. I says, well, how did you pay for your electricity? And it went, well, I chopped woods. I said, okay, did you get paid for chopping woods? Yes. So we figured out what it was, He got financial aid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but just things like that.
Yeah.
And it was quite interesting.
Yeah. Well, and of course, funding a student's education is so important. So, and that leads me to my next question is, what's something that you did on the job here at AIC that you feel like had a long-term positive impact?
Well, I have had a number of graduates that I've seen that have told me, Sister Nadine, if you hadn't helped me to get financial aid, I would not have been able to go to college. And I know that many times when I was in the office and just working on bookwork, tedious work, I would get a little discouraged, but the Lord would remind me that was a ministry.
Absolutely.
And I found out after I left here, when these graduates
Yeah.
would tell me, then it just confirmed, yeah, it was definitely a ministry.
I love that. I really do love that. Well, so we kind of looked at your history of working here. So let's kind of move into school history and your experience with it. So did you personally meet or know any of the founding or the early members of AIC?
Yes, I met all of them.
Okay.
I was not personal friends with them. With a couple of them, yes, I became friends with, but I did meet them.
Okay.
And one of the ladies that was there at the beginning, you've met Paul Carruthers.
I believe so.
Yeah, and his mother was one that was here at the beginning. And of course I knew her until her death.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there were a number of them.
Okay. That's so cool. Like behind me, we have Alta Washburn's briefcase. It's kind of faded ink, but it says Reverend Alta Washburn. It has her home address. So we have, artifacts like this, but of course I never got to meet them, and probably a lot of our viewers may not have either. So that's cool to hear from someone who did. Well, what about some memorable co-workers and students from your time here? What are some names that kind of stand out to you?
Well, of course, I watched Brother Saggio's thing, and he mentioned Sister Thomas and Betty Hannah. Sorry, and I knew both of them.
Okay.
I knew Sister Thomas before she came here, and she and her husband both were here for a while.
Okay.
He was there. Same with Brother and Sister Hannah. Both. He was, I think, president here in the early years. So I was friends with them. It was wonderful working with them too. And then there were two special female students that these two girls both came as students the year that I came as bookkeeper. One was Stephanie Jordan. She's now Stephanie Coleman. And she just kind of, like the second year she was here, she kind of latched on to me, And it ended up, I was kind of like her second mother. And I performed her wedding, and I was her seamstress, I was her photographer, I was her soloist. But they did have a nice wedding.
Yeah.
But even to now, her two boys are my grandsons, and now one of them has two children. So it's really
special. Yeah.
So she still calls me Mom. She lives in Missouri. She's from Missouri, and so anyhow, she lives there. But I just talked to her on the phone the other day. The other one, very well. It was Maisie Villa.
Oh, my mother-in-law.
Yes, exactly.
How cool.
But she came the first year that I was here also.
All right.
Yeah, and of course we've kept up all through the years.
Yeah.
And I was hoping I could see her today after I found out she was still working here.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, so she's a very special lady. I know you know that.
Yes.
But yeah, so those two girls, now grown women, were very special to me.
All right.
And still are, yes.
That's so cool. Well, how about this? Now let's move on from people to just the history of the campus for a second. What are some things that you feel like changed at AIC from the time you started? Like looking at now, what are some of those differences? Okay, well, of course, one huge change was going from a school to a college. And that happened while I was here. Okay. I was privileged, I guess you'd call it privileged, to go through that. Yeah. In fact, the first time that we were getting the financial aid
office, all established with the federal student aid program. Brother Moore, Dave Moore, and I went to California to meet with the people there, and then Sister Moore came the next day and joined us. We made it a fun trip too. But yeah, so we were there, and of course that changed the courses that were offered, and then now becoming part of SAGU has made an even more amount of things that courses and degrees that the students can get, and a physical change was the number of buildings that were added while I was here, because when I came, this building, the Washburn building, and I think the maintenance building was here, and the administration / chapel building.
Okay.
Those were the buildings that were here.
Wow.
When I came. So then we got that little, I don't know how many rooms it is now, but that little building that's next to the administration building.
Oh, that's like the student center.
Is that what
right
it
now.
is now? It has been a number of things over the years. When we first got it, it had two we used them as classrooms on each end, and in the middle which there's still a front door and a back door.
Yeah.
Okay, the front door was like the when the people come in, when they first come, the greeting and everything. My office was on the other side.
Oh, okay.
In all the years, there have been many adjustments and changes to the building, even since you've been here. I think there's been some changes. Yeah, and we added the Lee building. And just a little side note, I don't want to take up too much time with this, but when they were building the Lee building, we had a volunteer group here working on it.
Yeah.
And this one day it started raining real hard, so they couldn't work on that. So they needed something to do. Yeah. So that's when the porch and the stairs got added on to that little modular building.
Oh,
there.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was done for a purpose.
Okay. I've wondered about that sometimes.
Yeah. So that's
cool.
how it got happened. And of course, then the cafeteria, the gymnasium, the student union. Yeah. Those were all added while I was here. And it was exciting to see them. That it was kind of, some people got disappointed when the cafeteria went up because it took over the basketball courts.
Oh, I see. Well, I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but on this wall behind you, Nadine, there's a 3D model of the campus back in, I believe, like 1986, and it's before the cafeteria was even built. So
yes,
I might need to include a picture of that here, but that's a really cool model that we have the privilege of being able to house here.
Right. And there's, I guess everything was there. Oh, did I say the dormitory building too was built?
I don't think so, but that one was built in, I think, 84.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't remember the years for all those, but that's neat. So, yeah.
Well, so let's kind of look at what stayed the same from the time you started to now. Is there anything that still seems the same?
You mean what you do now, or the physical? It
can be anything. The atmosphere, the students, the buildings.
Oh, okay.
Anything like that.
Yes. Yeah, I did think about that. They still have chapel services.
Yes.
That was my first thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad of that. And I believe that faculty members and staff are ready at any time to pray with students.
Yeah.
And I so appreciate that. It's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are two things I thought of with that.
Okay, and I love that those two things are like a core part of the campus, and they've been here for so long.
Yes.
Well, let's see. One more question kind of about school history. Did any members of your family work here at AIC or attend?
No,
No.
just me.
Just you.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So our next section is memories. So how would you describe your overall experience at AIC?
Okay, I was thinking about this and I thought there's one word that would describe my overall experience, and that is wonderful.
Oh, I love it.
Now I'm getting
But that's totally okay.
because, well, I mentioned earlier that sometimes I would get discouraged.
Yeah.
And the Lord would remind me, but I had so many times with faculty and staff and students, that, and it made it all worthwhile.
Yeah.
And that's why I can say overall, it was wonderful.
Yeah. Oh, that's so great. What was your favorite memory from the wonderful time that you had at AIC?
Well, it'd be hard
To narrow down?
to narrow it down to one memory over 36 years. But there were very good memories. There were a lot, including the mission trips that I was privileged to go on with students. And we had a lot of weekend trips to like border towns across the Mexico border. And nothing into the interior, but just the border towns, and to the different reservation churches and all in the state, and so those were really nice too. And one year we decided then I was missions director at the time, and we decided to do a foreign missions trip. That's why I said the Mexico ones were just across the border, so, but we decided that we were going to do a real foreign missions trip. And so it was decided we would go to the Philippines.
Oh, how cool. I actually saw photos of that in the yearbook today.
Okay, yeah. And so we started planning, and President Moore told me at the time, since the flight was so expensive, that we should plan to stay for a full month.
Wow.
I know.
Ooh.
Fortunately, it was in the summer, But so this was our first really foreign missions trip, like I mentioned, and I have really fond memories of that and how God moved in so many ways.
All right, so you were here for a long time. Can you tell me how you feel like you changed personally during your time at AIC?
Well, I mentioned about dealing with the federal government, and that was one thing that I really learned how to do. And I remember one of the gals that was in charge of the Pell Grants at that time, and she said, after we'd known each other for some time, she said, Nadine, you have the strangest questions, you have the strangest ideals, or not ideals, but things that happen, I said, well, live with it, but, and also, like I think I mentioned this, the Lord had reminded me many times that it was not just a job that I had, but it was a ministry that I had. So.
I love that. Well, we're about to wrap things up, so our last question is, what would you like to say to current or even future students or employees?
Well, one thing, you probably will get discouraged at times. It's inevitable. I think everybody goes through that. But just remember that you are preparing for a ministry in some field, even whatever field it is, because you can have a ministry in whatever field you go into. So that's what I want to just remind you, that you are preparing for a ministry in some field, and just know that God is with you and He will carry you through whatever happens.
Well, thank you, Nadine, for being here. And again, this interview is part of the series Share Your Story. If you are interested in sharing your story on an interview, please contact us at AIC Library at sagu.edu. Again, thank you so much.